Last year, around back to school time, life looked very different. It's funny how seasons sneak up on you. One minute, you're buying school supplies and taking pictures on the first day, and the next minute, you look up and you realize a whole year has passed and you have changed right along with it. 1 year later, here I am. I'm healthier than I was. I'm building new projects. I'm spending more intentional time with my grandkids. And I'm realizing that closing one season, it isn't sad. It makes room for the next one. So today, we're doing a little Life on the Verge, a back to school tradition that is changing without going away, some good vibes and white wine with a fellow Leo, and then we're getting into reality television because I have opinions. I do. Paola and Russ, Thais and Patrick, Cara and Guillermo, Shekinah and Sarper, Orange County, Beverly Hills, Miami. People, we have things to discuss. Welcome to Living on the Verge. Let's get right on into it. Happy Friday, y'all. I think Life on the Verge is officially becoming a Friday thing around here. Not necessarily because every week needs to be dramatic, but because sometimes the ordinary week is the story. Sometimes it's a drive-in movie with your grandsons. Sometimes it's a birthday party you're so glad you attended. Sometimes it's realizing the tradition you created years ago has grown up because, you know what? The kids are growing up too. So let's talk a little Life on the Verge. I'm going to call this week's segment Dessert Before Dinner. So this week I had Ethan and Zeke, and I wanted to do something that felt like summer, with summer winding down. It didn't have to be a huge production, not a vacation, certainly not at the level of Camp Nana, but just something memorable. We ended up going to the drive-in, and the whole night kind of had this backwards little rhythm that made it perfect. I thought it was such a fun adventure. The boys got dropped off and we started off with a Michael Jackson on vinyl party, kind of continuing the spirit of the fun we had during Camp Nana. But then we decided, let's have dessert before dinner, which was a Nana first, but when you're with Nana, it turns out that it's now occasionally allowed because we had such a great time. Zeke had his first Baskin-Robbins visit, and just like anything else, there's just something so fun about watching a child experience a place for the first time. It isn't really about whether Baskin-Robbins has the greatest ice cream on earth. It's about that look in their eyes. You know, the one that you get to see when something ordinary to you is really so brand new to them. I mean, all the flavors, the tiny tasting spoon, the notion that you got to try something before you had to decide which one you wanted to buy. It was a really cool experience. We sat outside, enjoyed our ice creams, and then we picked up canes, went home, made some homemade popcorn. My homemade popcorn is a lot healthier than the microwavable one, and the endless quantities were copious. And not to be forgotten, the dollar store trip where each of them was allowed to pick out some dollar store candy, and then we headed off. We turned the back of the Santa Fe into our little tailgate camp. Blankets, chairs, snacks, boys tossing popcorn around in the drive-in movies. Because of course they did. and all of us settling in for a movie. And then, you guys, there were not one, but two shooting stars. Two. Ethan was flabbergasted. And you can't schedule that kind of wonder. You can't put it into the itinerary or buy it at the concession stand. It just happens. And you know what's even better? Sometimes you're just lucky enough to notice. Ethan was just so awestruck. By the time we got home, I was happy, tired, and fulfilled. They were happy, tired, and fulfilled. And that is the sweet spot, isn't it? Isn't that what we really hope for? It wasn't my goal to wring every possible activity out of the day or spend the most amount of money. I just wanted to spend time with them. And I wanted to do just enough that we all get to go home with the story. I kept thinking back over the last few days about the wonder in their eyes. You know, as adults, we become hard to impress, right? We've seen the ice cream counter. Most of us know how the drive-in works. And we all understand that popcorn is really just popcorn. But it's the children. It's the children that remind us that the world is still full of firsts. And if you're paying attention, their first can become your first in a different way. Well, as it turns out, the drive-in also landed right at back to school time, which brings me to a tradition I've had with the grandkids for years. Papa and I have made it a tradition to take them to buy school shoes for back to school. And it was our thing, but it didn't start off as our thing. There's a backstory. And it goes back years and years, actually. It's not a tradition we started, even though I would love to take credit for it because I think it's pretty fantastic. But it goes back to the days where our older two boys were in middle school. Times were tight. We were supporting 4 kids. And Grandma and Grandpa had a handful of grandchildren. And in order to help defray the cost of going back to school, they started a tradition, and they'd gather all the grandchildren together. We would all go eat somewhere and then usually head over to the Montebello Town Center. So that's a geographic reference for you that might bring back some memories. We'd all head over to the town center, go to the various shoe stores, and the kids would each get to pick out a pair of shoes. Now, back then, the cost of shoes wasn't cost prohibitive, and, you know, there were really kind of no limits. But it was a tradition that the kids grew excited for. I think we parents were really grateful for because it was a financial help, and the grandparents really looked forward to the time spent. And so the tradition went on for years and years. Our younger two were able to take part in the tradition, you know, in the beginning in their elementary school years. And then it kind of waned as Grandma and Grandpa got older. But once our grandkids entered school, we started the tradition. And I got to tell you, it's something that I looked forward to every year. We would go together, make a little event out of it. And the shoes kind of became secondary to the time spent in the tradition. But alas, kids get older, schedules change, you know, the families get busier, the timing doesn't work. And what works when they're little doesn't always work when one is a teenager. And the others, they have their own activities, sports, commitments, tournaments, preferences, their own little calendars to maintain. And so this year, instead of trying to force the old version of the tradition, I didn't want to let it go altogether. But instead, I put some money in a card for their parents to use towards school shoes. And I put a little note in it personalized for each grandchild, because I want them to understand that the tradition still matters and still means something to me, and I hope it still means something to them. And so, you guys, this isn't really a story about the money. It's a story about how love sometimes just has to change its delivery system. We could have just decided, if Nana's not going to be able to work it out so that we could all head over to the store together, then the tradition is over. And I could have held on to the version of this tradition that my in-laws created all those years ago. And then the tradition may have become more of an obligation, not just for me, but for everyone else. And then when I thought about it, I realized, that would just miss the whole point. The point was never the transaction. The point isn't even really the shoes. The point is, Nana sees you. Nana and Papa are excited for your new school year. And we want to be a part of sending you into your school year feeling cared for and like it's a special time, because it really is. And so the new version of the tradition still says that. The dinner, the drive-in, the phone call, the first date picture, those things can still say that. And so the form can change while the meaning remains intact. And that makes me smile. It does. Last year on the podcast, I opened back to school season. You may recall, if you're a longtime listener, talking about how proud I was of the kids as they moved into their next grades and stages. I also shared the practical closet clean out tip. Use back to school and Christmas break as natural reset points. So it's an opportunity to go through what no longer fits the kids, what's worn out, what can be donated, and what is actually needed before buying more. I still stand by that, but this year I would add a few things. First, ask the child what part of back to school actually matters to them. We think we know. We assume it's the backpack or the shoes or the first day outfit. But sometimes it's knowing who their teacher is. Sometimes it is whether their friend will be in the same class. Sometimes it's having the right water bottle so they don't feel different. The adult checklist and the child's emotional checklist, they're not always the same. Second, do not wait until the night before school starts to test this routine you have in your head. As you approach, move bedtime a little earlier. Find the shoes. Charge the devices. Decide where the backpacks are going to live for the school year. Do one practice morning, especially if you have multiple children. This could be really helpful. And especially if your household has a tendency towards morning chaos. Tiny little systems, they can really help. They can make the first week feel less like an emergency and more like just an adaptation. Third, take the picture. Of course we take the picture, but do not let the picture become the whole morning. We all love the sign with the grade and the teacher and the dream job and marking the growth. But if everyone in the house is stressed out and yelling and one kid's crying because their hair isn't right and the lighting is wrong, you guys, we've lost the plot. Get the picture you get and let it be real. Isn't that the fun part at the end of the day? Isn't that what later becomes the real memory, is the story behind the picture and not the picture or the drama surrounding it? And finally, remember that back to school is a transition for the adults too. Take it easy on yourself. Parents are managing calendars and lunches and transportation and emotions. And grandparents, like me, they may be realizing the little child they once walked into kindergarten doesn't need them the same way anymore. Like my granddaughter, heading into her sophomore year. I still remember showing up for kindergarten. And it can be bittersweet, but being needed differently does not mean being needed less. And that might actually be the whole lesson of this whole season for me. Different is not automatically worse. A changed tradition is not a failed tradition. It's just different. You know, as I sit here and I reflect, I think my in-laws would be really proud that we're carrying on their tradition. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let a ritual grow with the people that it was created for. Well, you guys, it's time for Winos on the Verge, my honest take on the wineries, wine bars, and hidden gems I discover along the way. Now, let's move from school shoes to wine shoes, because I did put on my wedges, a cute outfit, and head to Leanne's birthday party at Wiens. The party had great energy. The room was really a cool room to have a party. It was bright. It was fun. It was roomy. It was set up nicely. The room was loud and jumping. The music was going. There was a DJ. She had a lovely turnout. And, you know, it was really clear that Leanne surrounds herself with people who enjoy her. And that says something about a person. You know, you can tell when people are showing up because they feel obligated, and you can tell when a room genuinely wants to celebrate someone. This felt like the second one. And so I spent a lot of time with Sue and Wendy. They're my friends from my women's business group. And I had a couple of glasses of the Crowded White Vintage 2025. It'll run you $32 a bottle if you're a non-member. It was crisp and fresh, and it worked very nicely on a hot summer afternoon. But the bigger review is that I was so glad I went. At the end of the day, I had good vibes. The food was delicious. Leanne is a fellow Leo, and this, in some small way, felt like a little last birthday season celebration. One last dance, literally. We girls, all the business, women in business girls, hit the floor for one big O dance. And it felt like a nice way to close the book on the big birthday and move into whatever comes next in life. As I sit here thinking about it, I realize, you know, there's something funny about Leo season. We Leos, we do like a celebration. We like a little attention. We like a moment. But the part I'm taking with me is not the cake or the gifts or even the surprise party and all the fantastic celebrations leading up to it. It is the people that showed up. It's the grandkids. It's the sentiments in the cards that I reread. It is the ordinary Tuesday after all the festivities when you realize, I'm still living the life that I was celebrating. So cheers to Leanne, and cheers to all the fellow Leos, and cheers to leaving a party glad that you went. As for Wiens, would I go back? Yep. Been before, will go again. In my opinion, a really solid choice for an afternoon wine tasting in the Temecula Valley. All right, let's get into 90 Day The Last Resort, because this cast is giving every possible version of a relationship in trouble. I'm not going to bury the lead. My quick prediction, none of these couples are going to make it. But I don't think they're all failing for the same reason. So let's go couple by couple. First, you have Paola and Russ. And if you're new to the franchise, they've been together for 12 years. They have a son that they're raising, but they've been really struggling. Paola's a wrestler and she wants to move. So she moves to Las Vegas and he followed her, even though she was hoping to kind of ditch him. And here's what struck me. I think that Paola and Russ are the couple whose problems feel the most genuine. But this does not feel like a fight created for a television resort. It feels like years of love, years of hurt, history, and exhaustion, just all sitting in the same room. To me, there are some real raw, nitty-gritty, we're just different kind of people differences between these two. And I don't think it's produced. But what I do think is that Russ is fighting for Paola more than Pao is fighting for Russ. Or at least for the idea of staying married. I honestly am not sure he really likes her. And it's pretty obvious she does not like him. And I kind of feel like emotionally, she already left the marriage a long time ago. And whereas I think Russ's idea of following her to Las Vegas was his declaration of, look how much I love you and how far I would go to save our marriage. I think for Pao, it felt controlling and desperate. And what do I have to do to get rid of you? And I think what sealed the deal for me on this one was the 12-year anniversary celebration and the scene where Russ gives Pao the necklace. And as she's grabbing the gift, she's already rolling her eyes and kind of saying like, oh, what is it this time, Russ? And please tell me it's not a necklace. And then promptly opens a necklace. I get it. She doesn't feel like she's being heard. But I also get it from his perspective. He felt like there was additional meaning in this gift. And immediately she disregarded any thought or intention that went into it. I think these two are done. Let's move on to Thais and Patrick. Okay, so Thais and Patrick, their recurring tension really centers around trust and communication. And they have a lot of family issues that get involved as part of the thing as well. Because honestly, you got, Brother John, and he could be, I don't know, kind of a pain in the patooties, but he's also one of my favorite 90-day characters. But let me tell you what specifically really frustrates me about Patrick. He doesn't listen. He doesn't engage emotionally. He almost seems incapable of understanding Thais's very big feelings and emotions. Like during that scene where she's getting ready to take the pregnancy test and you can just see she's visibly terrified of the idea of being pregnant again. And he doesn't even pause to consider that. He immediately starts trying to tell her it's all going to be okay and that they will adjust. And he's just not listening. And I think Thais, on the other hand, is being very clear about her wants and her needs. And I feel that some of the things that she's doing are kind of a test. In other words, what if I'm not ready for another child? Do you still love me? What if I can't handle your brother and all his big opinions all the time? Will you still choose me? I'm not sure these two are still acting as a team. And from what I understand in current day, they're kind of living somewhat separate lives. And that is, in effect, why I think / pretty much know they are not going to make it. I'm not even sure if this is accurate, so I don't want to misreport, but I could swear that social media reported earlier this summer that he filed for divorce. So that's why I don't think those two are going to make it. And let's move on to Cara and Guillermo. You guys, these two are the ones that just break my heart because even when I originally watched them, on their original before the 90 days love story and the wedding, and ultimately they got pregnant. I was really rooting for these two. I really liked them as a couple. I thought they were really gonna make it. But they've been living in separate homes, even though they're, right next to one another. And they have big issues, mainly surrounding built up resentment, jealousy, mostly on Guillermo's part. And he also has some suspicions of infidelity. And all of this kind of overshadows the feelings that they clearly still have between them. It's so obvious to me that these two are still in love. And I don't think it's just a matter of, well, we're used to one another, so let's see if we can make it work. I think they're genuinely physically attracted to one another. I think that they genuinely love one another. And I can see the pain in Kara's eyes because he has so much shame surrounding her choice to supplement her income by starting an OnlyFans account. It seems to be the one thing that just, Guillermo just can't come back from. And it just keeps resurfacing. Every time they take a couple steps forward, even throughout this therapy, it comes up and it sends them way back. And I don't think that anything that Kara could do short of giving Guillermo what he wants, which would then mean sacrificing what she wants, would save this marriage. And so that's why I think they're not going to make it. Oh boy. And now let's talk Shekinah and Sarper. Now these two, when they first showed up on my TV, I just did not like them. I didn't like her. I didn't like him. Of course, he had a terrible edit the first season, so he was kind of poised for us to not like him. But in the years since, he has, come to America. They're now living as husband and wife here. And he's been pursuing this career in stand-up comedy while she is still running her business as an esthetician. And it's obvious that physical, sexual chemistry is not the issue between these two. But their relationship seems to have issues surrounding control and independence, and whether the compromise between them moves in both directions. It seems to be a very lopsided relationship. And I don't really think that they're genuinely compatible. I think that whereas Kara and Guillermo have genuine love for one another, I think these two are just kind of trying to stay committed to the image and the decision of how they decided to portray themselves to the world. And now they can't undo it. And whereas I always thought Sarper was kind of the jerk, honestly, Shekinah is insufferable. And I find him making the most minimal of requests for her to be rational. And she's just constantly erring on the side of pretentious and high maintenance. And I don't understand it. But what I will say is when it comes to control, I think she's the one controlling that relationship. And I honestly am not sure that Sarper genuinely likes her. And at the end of the day, I think you at minimum need to sort of like the person that you're with. So that's why I don't think these two are going to make it. And quite frankly, if I never had to watch Shekinah on TV again, it would be too soon. And so that's my last resort board. None of them are going to make it. Pao and Russ feel the most genuine, but genuine pain doesn't automatically create a workable marriage. So I'll keep watching, and you can tell me which couple, if any, you think will prove me wrong. Let's move on to the Real Housewives of Orange County, because I'm not going to go and give you a big recap, but I just want to kind of tell you guys what I think is working for me this season and what feels stale and overproduced. So let's start with what's working for me this season. Carmella Garcia. I love her. She's the newcomer. I think that she is fitting in with the dynamic, not because she's just like the girls, but because she's giving everybody a run for their money, keeping them on their toes. And I don't feel that anything about her is produced. Her outward appearance is very different from her actual personality and the way she carries herself. And that's a shame on us moment, right? We're the ones who are judging the book by their cover. I don't know. Just thought it needed to be said. And I really think that she's a fresh storyline that we needed. I'm not sure how I feel about the whole Heather Dubrow. Are we trying to take her down this season? What's going on? But I do admit that people have kind of given her, a pass for seasons and seasons. So if that's the reason, then okay, I don't know. Now, what I think is stale and overproduced, I'm so sad to really say this out loud, but the Gina and Emily dynamic, that whole, 2 scenes with the TikToks and Shannon showing up, and you guys, why? Did anybody want to see that? Are people writing into Bravo asking to see scenes with Gina and Emily making their TikToks? Isn't it enough that we get to see Gina and Emily's TikToks? I don't know. Maybe it's me who's changing. Let's go with that. So who do I think is carrying the show? Well, honestly, I think Tamra is holding her own this season. I think she is having an excellent showing this season. But at the end of the day, I think that Carmella is outshining all of them. And who am I tired of? Well, I really, really want to love Shannon. You guys, I loved Shannon, but I just can't get behind the physical antics. I just don't know. Like, I'm dating myself, and believe me, this reference is even before my time. But like, who does she think she is? Laurel and Hardy, the Three Stooges? I don't get it. And as far as I can see, there is genuine organic conflict that is missing this season. It doesn't feel authentic. It feels like people are starting shit just to start shit. And I don't think that it's going to be sustainable until we go back to the formula where, people really have beef. I love that the Tres Amigas, I know it's Tres Amigas, but I have to say it the way they do. The Tres Amigas have basically been reunited. I'm glad that beef is behind us, because what I was really praying for was not another season of Shannon and Vicky and Tamra all fighting amongst one another. So that makes me happy. But I am not sure there's any real controversy, any real tension. And so we'll see. I mean, as the season progresses, I think it's kind of still too early to know how it'll all shake out. But I stand by my earlier notion that for a big 20th monumental season, I'm not blown away. I understand there's still going to be some big cameos coming. And yeah, I like seeing Michael and, whatever. I think the bigger juice and the bigger gossip is the tea behind the fact that apparently Andy Cohen reached out to Brianna Culberson, who is Vicky's daughter. She was on the show back in the good old days on season 1 and kind of grew up on the show. And word on the street is that she asked Andy Cohen to lose her number and wanted nothing to do with any possibility of a cameo. So for me, it's that kind of season 20 tea that's more interesting. So far, none of the cameos knocked me off my socks, but again, it might just be still too early to know. So I'll keep watching. And really quick, as it turns out, the rumors were true. Amanda Francis is a one and done on Beverly Hills. Her departure has been reported as confirmed. And so it's not just social media guessing anymore. Am I surprised? No. I thought she might have made a different decision once the whole Rihanna reached out to me and told me not to quit thing came to pass. But I'm not surprised. They really treated her terribly. Now, did I want her back for a second season? I don't know. I think her quirkiness was a little much, but again, she didn't have a fair shake. And so maybe this will be one of those things like how I feel about Crystal Minkoff, right? In the moment, wasn't crazy about her. Once she was gone, really missed her. So maybe that's what'll happen with Amanda Francis. Was she a poor fit? I don't know. I don't feel like they ever gave her a fair shake, so it's hard to say. But who do we want to replace her? There's already rumors, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on another Reality on the Verge segment. But for now, I just once again have to say it. You guys, we're missing opportunities when it comes to the Real Housewives of Miami. Period. I stand by it. Why do I keep saying that Miami is being overlooked? Because it is. We've missed opportunities to talk about Todd buying Alexia a house. We've missed opportunities about following whether Marisol has had her 35th wedding to her husband. We've missed opportunities surrounding the drama between Jody and Lisa. And are they broken up? Are they back together again? Has she moved on? What's going on with all of those storylines? And what in the heck, Bravo? Why are you missing all of this? So the latest reminder are all of these legal woes and this news surrounding Lenny Hochstein. Apparently, 3 women have filed medical malpractice lawsuits alleging serious injuries and inadequate post-operative care after cosmetic procedures. And of course, these are all allegations in civil cases, not findings of fact. And this is why I am saying alleged, but feel free to do your own research. And separate from that, another lawsuit made a sexual battery allegation. And apparently Lenny Hochstein's attorney has categorically denied this and says that they intend to contest. But from my latest research, there has not been a response filed to the original allegation. So this is another wait and see moment and another reason why Bravo should be filming Miami. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not saying that I want Bravo to go, Law and Order on it, but I feel like avoiding it or just not picking cameras back up and keeping Miami on pause is a real missed opportunity. And so I'm not going to litigate any of these cases here on the podcast. I will promise to be as responsible as I can when I report updates. I will attribute every claim and denial, and I'll keep saying it that Miami deserves coverage that understands both the sparkle and the stakes. And so, let me give you a quick watch list before we close. Did I watch in the city? Well, I started it, but I didn't give enough time to it, and I didn't watch enough of it to give you a real verdict. And I'm not going to pretend that watching a trailer or just clips is the same as watching the season. Listen, I understand the premise. It's, familiar summer house people and their New York circle dealing with kind of grown-up stuff, the marriage, separation, parenthood, blah, blah, blah. And that should really be right in my lane. But for some reason, it did not immediately grab me. Maybe I wasn't in the mood. Maybe the show itself needs more time. So for now, my official review is incomplete. And if I go back and it changes my mind, I promise to come back and tell you. Sometimes it's just there's no interest because life is too full and there are too many other options. And I think this may be one of those times. I also just started Married at First Sight. No spoilers, I promise. And I'm going to keep watching because this is one of those shows where a first impression can go wildly wrong. Someone who seems perfect at the wedding can unravel by the honeymoon. And somebody who looks awkward in the first 10 minutes could end up being the only reasonable, viable adult option in the whole experiment. So I'm not ready to name heroes and villains yet. I'm just watching, and I'm going to look out and stay curious about the stranger that this person married. Who's already defending a fantasy? Who's willing to adjust when the actual person doesn't match the checklist they had for them in their head? I'll report back on all of this when I have enough evidence. And in the meantime, if you're watching, let me know your thoughts. So before we close, I want to come back home with one practical tip, because a good Friday episode should leave us with something we can actually use. Here it is. Create one back-to-school landing zone near the door, a place the family uses the most. Is it the garage door? Is it the front door? It doesn't have to be a Pinterest project and a perfect mudroom setup. It can be something simple, 2 hooks, a basket, maybe a small charging spot. Backpacks go there. Shoes go there. Papers that need parents' attention go in one of the baskets. Water bottles get emptied and placed where they may actually stand a chance of getting washed every night. And then on Sundays, do a 10-minute Sunday reset. Check the calendar, make sure you have all of the things you need for the week, locate the shoes, charge the devices, refill the things that need refilling, and this is important. Let each child own one piece of the routine. Make sure it's age appropriate, because for this, the goal is not a perfect looking house. The goal is to have fewer frantic questions when everybody's trying to get out the door. And here's the parenting part. Build the system with the child, not only for the child. Ask for them to help with things that they can realistically remember, and figure out where they naturally drop their things, because the system that is actually going to work is a system that works with the family's real habits. And so that's it. It's simple. Your Friday home tip: 1 landing zone, 1 Sunday reset, and 1 responsibility the child can own. As I was putting this episode together, I kept coming back to school. Not as a shopping season, more as a marker of time. Last year around back to school time, life looked very different. The grandkids were a year younger. I was a year younger. You were a year younger. Some of the projects that I have going on now hadn't even been imagined yet. Some habits had not taken hold. Some things I was carrying had not been put down. 1 year later, here I am. I'm healthier than I was. I'm building new projects. I'm spending more intentional time with my grandkids and the people that fill my life. And I'm learning that a full life doesn't have to be a frantic life. That's one of the biggest gifts of all of these realizations. And I'm also seeing that the traditions that I love, they don't have to stay frozen as they always were in order to stay meaningful. The school shoe tradition can evolve and still be important. Birthday season can end without the celebration disappearing. And the grandkids can get older without the wonder going away. Life on the verge, it can be dessert before dinner, 2 shooting stars, maybe a loud party, a crisp glass of white wine, and an ordinary Friday conversation with all of you. Closing a season, I don't see it as sad. I see it as making room for the next one. It is necessary. So here's the question I'm leaving you with today. What tradition in your life may need to change shape so it can keep its meaning? And what season are you ready to close? Not because it was bad, but because something new is asking for room. Thank you for spending part of your Friday with me. If this episode made you think of somebody who is navigating a new season, send it to them. Follow the show, leave a review if you have not already, and come find me on Instagram and Facebook so we can keep living on the verge together. I'm Virginia. Be well. Notice the wonder, and I'll talk to you on Tuesday. Until then, I'll be right here, living on the verge.